Howdy, everyone. All right, I'm going to try to remember to keep my voice up because I know when this thing is on the tripod and I'm away from it, it's very difficult to hear me sometimes. So I'm going to try to yell a little bit and hopefully that works. All right, so what I've been working on is I have to basically, if you remember out at the airplane, I'm doing the manual flap setup. So this piece needs to be mounted. And this is the piece that's going to get the notches cut into it so that that will lock in my different flap positions. In order to mount this down between the seats, if you can imagine that open tunnel area being through here, the seats are on both sides. Down that center is the push-pull tube for the for the elevators. That actually, when it moves through its rotation, it comes up higher than the floor level. It kind of runs uphill. So what I'm working on is basically a cover that will, if you can imagine it, it's going to be shaped something like that. Actually, it's going to be shaped about like that. So underneath here is where the push-pull tube will run, and of course now it's got plenty of clearance above the floor pan. And then on top of this is where this thing will ultimately mount. So that's what I've been fooling with. As you can see, I've got a poster board template made. I fooled with this most of the day yesterday. And again, this is going to be its general shape. I can get it roughly into position. And this back piece kind of runs uphill a little bit, but anyway. So I made my initial piece freehand, just taking measurements and laying it out, and drawing it out, and then cutting it out and bending it and trying to get it to physically fit onto the airplane. And this is very, very, very close. So then what I had done, I'd taken this template, because again, this was all done by hand. It's not exact, and it's probably not exactly symmetrical. So then I took this, and I transferred these dimensions into a very simple CAD program, and then printed a new one out, full size. I had to piece it together because I've only got standard size sheets of paper. I didn't have anything long enough to put in the printer to print it out in one sheet. But now this is exact because I basically just drew out the individual pieces and then mirrored or flipped them from one side to the other. So this piece is exactly the same as this. This wedge shape here is exactly the same as this wedge shape because they're just duplicates. So I know that this is symmetrical, and when I lay one over the other, they pretty much match almost exactly. I did make a couple of changes in lengths. I made things a little bit longer just to give me some cushion. When I cut it on the aluminum, I can always trim it back. So that's what I've got. So this should be an exact size, symmetrical CAD drawing. So now I'm going to cut this out, and this will be my template to put on the aluminum. The challenge, the potential challenge is going to be cutting it out because there are some weird areas back in here that might be a little bit of a challenge. And then, of course, I have no idea if I'm going to be able to bend it. I just don't know. I don't have access to the brake that I usually use because I'm not back at work yet. So I have to literally bend everything by hand. I don't know if I'm going to be able to or not. I'm using some pretty thin aluminum. We'll see when we get there. Let me get this template cut and let me get it on the aluminum traced, and then I'll see if I can at least get the aluminum cut. Then at that point, we'll see how the bending goes. So that's kind of where I am. This will probably take another day or so, but we'll get there. All right, talk to you later. Howdy, everyone. Here is the tunnel cover so far. It's fair, considering it was a challenge to cut. Again, here is the template, and you can see cutting out these areas here could be a challenge, and it wasn't too bad, but getting it cut took some time and effort, and then bending it was a real chore because, again, I don't have a brake, so I literally had some wood clamped. I had some pieces of wood clamped to my countertop here, and then I had the piece on that hardwood, and then I overlaid it with another piece of hardwood with clamps to pinch the part. And then I literally did all my 90-degree bends with a hammer. And that was difficult, especially trying to bend these legs here where they come down to this point. That was a challenge to get that bent. I had bent these longer sidewall legs first, which made clamping this to counterbend the flanges even more difficult. So I'm not complaining. I'm just saying that it was labor intensive. And I say it's fair because, again, I don't have a brake, and I would have liked the bends to have been a little tighter. The bend radius is a little bit bigger than I would like. I doubt that I got everything exactly 90 degrees. You can see it's got a little bit of a wobble to it. Of course, it's thin aluminum. It's only 25 thousandths thick, so when I get it bolted down to the floor, it will be fine. But it's just, it's not absolutely perfect. If I had a brake, it would have been a lot nicer. Things would be perfectly square and true, and the bend radiuses would have been a little tighter. But anyway, I'm happy with it. I'm going to continue on with it and definitely install it. So one thing I wish I would have done differently was, you can see this gap here. And what I should have done, I should have taken this angle here. I basically should have I should have closed the gap. That's what I'm trying to say. I should have made this piece so it would have come straight down and either touched or overlapped this piece, kind of like this edge here is. But it was just an oversight on my part, and the seats go here, so you'll never see it. And I am not about to redesign the template and remake this whole entire piece. So that oversight is going to stay. I'll just chalk that up to character. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to lay out the existing holes that are on the floor of the aircraft. I'm going to lay those holes out here on these flanges and get this bolted down, and then I'll see how this back half fits. If I have to trim, I'll do my trimming, and then I'll lay out the bolt pattern for this back half. I'll get this all bolted down, and then I need to start figuring out how I'm going to incorporate this thing. Need to incorporate that for the manual flaps. All right. So that's where I am currently, and I'll get back to you when I've got something more to talk about. Howdy, everyone. So far, I've got this mock-up here. This is the original piece that I had made a while ago. It had that bigger aluminum base on it. I completely removed that, and I had basically taken just this piece and I had it out at the airplane, and I had laid it on top of that's not going to stay. There we go. I had basically just taken this piece here and laid it on the tunnel that I had made. I stuck it up through the black handle of the flap mechanism, and I basically just moved the flap mechanism up and down and kind of let it ride on this. And that basically moved this around enough so that I could figure out the angle that it needed to be. So as I moved the handle the flap handle on this piece, as I held it down at the base, it just kind of moved it around like this until it kind of worked. And then at that point, I just made a reference mark across the bottom, and I cut the bottom off according to that reference mark. Then I took it back out there, held it in place, worked the handle, and I kept doing that so that the handle, the slit in the handle, would follow this curve exactly. And at that point I knew that I had the bottom of this piece cut at the right angle. So then after that, I've decided how I'm going to mount this to the tunnel, and I made up these couple of brackets here that you see. I'll be using 3-4 size dome head rivets to rivet this together. This will be 3 rivets. And then I've got rivet locations marked on the top of the angles. You can see those there. And those are the attachment points that will attach this assembly to the tunnel. I removed the tunnel from the airplane. Well, what I had done with this still in the airplane, and with this piece now with the bottom cut to the correct angle, again, I just took this piece out to the airplane and I held it in place on the tunnel. I worked the handle back and forth, and that basically dictated where this piece was going to sit in relation to the tunnel. And I made that mark location. I don't know how well that's going to show up, but you can see where I made a line here for that location, and then I put a line across the back representing the width of this piece down at the bottom. Centered it on the tunnel. And then I went ahead and machined the slit on my little milling machine. That might be a better angle. So here's how this is all going to go together. So, as I said, this will be riveted as shown here. And then this assembly, I'm going to try to do this one-handed, as always. Which I don't know that I'll be able to do. Stand by one. I'll put the camera down. Can I do it? Yeah, maybe. All right, so this assembly is going to go like this. Let me see if I get this right. Yes. So this will go up here. Just like that. So that's how that's going to go together. And then, as I had shown earlier, I've already got the marks on these pieces of aluminum. These aluminum angles will be drilled through 5 rivets on each aluminum angle. So that's going to be 10 rivets total. And then that's how it looks as it comes through the tunnel. So my plan right now is to machine countersink the aluminum, those 5 locations per aluminum angle. So those locations will be machine countersunk, and then this tunnel cover is going to be dimpled. So I'm going to put flush rivets on this. So that's the plan. So let me get this going, and I'll get some holes drilled in the brackets, get some holes drilled in the tunnel, and get some dimples and countersinks, and we'll see how that works out. Then, of course, I'll mount this entire assembly back into the airplane and verify that I'll verify with this back in the airplane that the flap handle will indeed continue to track this without any binding or interference. All right, I will talk to you guys here shortly.